Hey, Tommy. Good morning. How you doing today?
Good morning, Reed. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Oh, looks like the video even cleared up, so perfect timing on
Oh,
that.
thank goodness. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful internet problems at home. So,
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I'm like just random questions. Are you on cable as well, or are you have the luxury of fiber?
so we're cable, but I have an Ethernet cord coming from the living room down through the basement, so that's how I connect. So I usually don't
Nice.
have these problems.
Oh yeah. Yep. No, I'm unfortunately beholden to cable because the building is old and there is no other way for me to get anything besides Comcast, which is the company that I vehemently hate. But
That's
it's
I'm
the
I'm with you. Yeah,
yeah.
Verizon. So,
Yeah, so as long as the audio stays good, we'll be fine. But I appreciate you coming back on. I think this is your third
just
time?
second,
Second. Okay.
just a
Last time
second.
I know was
Yeah,
in November for
yeah.
for another talk as well. But yeah, I'm appreciate you coming on to providing kind of a different spin as well on goals. The uh, I think it's a pretty broad topic that's has quite a new set of features that have been coming out in the last 6 to 12 months, and it's something that I've knowing what we know from the MVP conversation, some cool new things that will also eventually be coming out for it as well too. But I'm excited to see it grow for sure as a tool. And honestly, I actually set up about four of them this week myself because I
Oh,
realized like
really?
I've only been using it for my clients, and I have two primary things related to it that I ended up configuring is because I track my website traffic, and I also have
Mhm.
for people tuning in, you probably know that I have a few app source reports like Google Analytics, and then a whole
Yeah,
bunch of smattering of stuff. And I realized I don't really like every once in a while I log into the site and I see spikes, dips, and stuff like that, but I don't do any I don't do any weekly tracking, and so I set up two goals to tell me if it's above or below a threshold per week. So my weekly downloads for that. The number one reason is because Microsoft, if they promote my Google Analytics report, like if you open up what template apps can be installed, if I'm on the first page, I get like 6 times more daily downloads. I'm like 20 to 30 a day. If they take it off the homepage, I'm down to like 3 to 5 a day. But so I basically on my little chart I see constant peaks and dips between there. It's just kind of nice to know, but I didn't have any alerts set up for that. So I actually put a threshold into there using goals to now actually tell me and basically give me an indication, hey, Microsoft's probably promoting your app again, just to give me a bit
right.
of transparency back into my own data sets. But I
Well,
I
and
do
that's
love
the
the
powerful,
interface.
yeah. And that's
Uh,
the powerful thing about goals. It's amazing it's been out for this long. And I know you're doing two in a row, but there hasn't been a lot of content, demos, presentations about it. There's not really like a lot of slides that you see on goals, despite the use case that you just said. It's a really powerful feature. What are you going to do about GA4, by the way? That's going to change everything.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's already out for context, for people tuning in right now. GA4 is the new Google Analytics platform. They have shifted a bit on how they look for one at traffic and how it how the traffic relates to each other, and just like it's a bit better of a grasp from a high level on just how to actually see people's journey through the website, where they're going for, a whole bunch of like business stuff that I won't get into.
Yeah.
But their old version essentially was called the Universal Analytic Connector. Now they have the GA4 connector. Right now, Microsoft, the connector in Power BI is only the previous one, and I've done a couple tweets and social media posts about it, but I have uh, tried to make a bit of a fuss about the fact that hey, the old connector is being retired in about 13 months. Google
Right.
is going to stop supporting any API connections using any external connectors. But I've also been told by the product team, yeah, it could be better for sure. But it's also like the GA, the report that I built off of it is one of the most downloaded third-party app source reports in the entire Microsoft store. Like there's a bunch that Microsoft has made. I
Yeah.
know I'm in the top three, top five most downloaded for that one. One of the highest reviewed ones as well. Like so, I get a
Yeah.
lot of traffic. I've had about 25,000 downloads from mine since I've released
What?
it.
Yeah.
So like I've kind of like given them all that information. Like guys, this is a popular connector and report for you guys. Please, could you? Yeah, I have 13 months to do it. Can you build a new connector for GA4? I will rebuild my
Right.
report using that, but
But I
I need
need
that to
that
be templatizable
before.
if I
Yeah.
can use that as a word. So uh, I've talked to the product team and they say they'll consider it. I'm going to continue to bug them probably every
They'll
few months. Like,
consider it.
that's what they've said is this says it's not on our roadmap and we'll consider it. So if anybody from
Well,
the
you should
product team
walk them
happens to see
through.
this, I do hope that you guys will consider please making one. So many reports that are online today, like again, like in theory, if all of them are still installed, 25,000 reports are going to break and nobody's going to be able to
Right.
use it anymore. So it's a very
Every
popular
company has
data
a
source.
website. Every website tracks metrics. You
Yeah.
85% of those use Google Analytics, and that's what everyone's going to have to use. Pretty good
And it's
logical
yeah.
workflow for Microsoft there.
Yep. Well, unfortunately, this wouldn't be a. I don't know if this would be an idea on Power BI, but I'll actually I'll do a check on that later. But yeah, a few MVPs are for sure making a bit of a fuss with them about this, just to like uh, even from a business perspective. Like I get a lot of leads from people installing this, and so like it will have a pretty negative impact on my business, and
Yeah.
I'm sure a few others as well. So fingers crossed that. Crossed that that actually gets fixed. But yeah, yeah, I digress on that one. For from your sake though, if before we get started on goals and some of the conversation we've gotten, do you want to just do a quick recap for the people who didn't see your last one, who you are, what you've done, and
Yeah.
yeah, kind of where you're coming from?
So, hello everyone out in the bad internet world, depending on which connection you have. Apparently, I have an okay one right now. My name's Tommy Puglia. I'm a Microsoft MVP. Been in the space since I was Power BI designer. Work in Chicago, do consulting on the side, lead the Chicago Power BI user group. So if you are in the area, hopefully this year we'll actually have an on-site user group. I know the Microsoft building in downtown, they're still pretty iffy on allowing people back,
Yeah.
but we keep pressing them. So we'll have the pizza, we'll have the sandwiches, we'll do the whole thing. But definitely find us on Meetup. We have our next user group coming, I believe, next week. And we actually have our first international one. So we actually have Burnett Aguelo, and I cannot say his name, but all the time. He does amazing stuff on calculation groups. So we're gonna have a really fun one next week. It's gonna be live online. Yeah, and I've just been in this space forever. Really love talking about it. And goals has just been. I know Trev is probably he has the fedora, so he's kind of like the godfather of goals right now. But I've definitely also kind of latched on just because to me goals are what it's all about. So a lot of good stuff here. If you did listen to the other one, it's not going to be too repetitive. We'll touch on some of the themes Trev did, but we're going to also sell all the use cases because there's a whole I like to say like under the rock of goals that you may not even be aware of that what you can do with it. And that's kind of what we're going to go into today.
Exactly. Yep.
And you
And
didn't put the link for Meetup. Awesome. Yeah.
I did. Yep. And let's go ahead and flip over. There you are.
Alrighty. So hopefully by now, and again, goals has been out since May of 20. What year are we in? 2022. So May of 2021. It's been out and it's been available for anyone who's pro premium since probably I want to say the beginning of this year. Really going into this and talking about the power of goals. And again, I know that this was a conversation the other day. Again, let's kind of run through one more quick thing. If you like Power BI a lot, there's a pretty unique podcast out there where there's two people much smarter than I am named Mike Carlo and Seth Bauer. You may have heard of them. They lead Power BI tips. And we take a unique spin on everything related to Power BI. One thing I love about this community is if you want to learn how to do something, there are amazing resources. I'm literally on one of those amazing resources right now. But we take a different spin on the why and the what, where we call it the Power BI water cooler. We literally just had our last one, like how do you actually hire a report? Like who's dependent on that? What goes into that? We talked about if you had an amazing idea or solution for your company, how do you sell that? How do you become a solutions provider in your own company? So we're taking like different spins on all the hows in Power BI and saying like, okay, how does this really affect you? Why should you do it? There's not always a best practice. Even talking about goals today, there's not necessarily you should always do this. This is not necessarily just like your standard star schema data model. We're dealing with people. We're dealing with processes. We're dealing with culture. No matter where you are, you can't just do data and be successful in Power BI. You have to learn how to talk to people. You have to learn how to deal with processes. You have to learn how to, in a sense, change culture. So that's really all we're talking about. So it's a unique take. You can find us on Apple and Spotify. We do live streams on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. So come join us if that sounds appealing to you. So let's go and kind of talk about selling on goals. And I'm going to talk about a few things here on, I don't know if there's a poll out there on have you actually used goals. I did send out, or Reed sent out a form
Mm-hmm.
a bit earlier that is kind of a 2-minute, maybe 30 seconds form just to send out. We're actually going to use that in the demo today. So we've talked a lot about the benefits of goals, and I know Treb did a great job at that, but I think there's a lot of lack of engagement in our community. Some people have used it. You might have tried it and went, it doesn't really work out. Okay, maybe not for the organization. People weren't sure what to do with it. And one of the things I started to think was, why is that? Why isn't this part of every solution that we're doing? Number one, it doesn't work like a report, and it doesn't work like a standard data model where it's that 5 minutes to wow. That's because with any data model, if I connect it to Excel, Google Analytics, I can kind of already understand exactly what to do. But with goals, there's kind of a niche data source or data set or kind of reason you need to use a goal for it to really be effective. It doesn't work with any necessarily big data set that you have, and goals just kind of plug and play. So, and also for users, we've never really had anything like this where we're really tracking things in this way. It's always been these standard reports. We've had dashboards. So where do scorecards actually fit? So I'm going to propose to everyone out there that goals are the really true dashboards. If you guys are still using the actual standard dashboard in Power BI today, I think the scorecard actually makes more sense. Let's back up. What's the point of a dashboard? It should be my high-level view, summary of up or down, thumbs up or thumbs down. I'm sure, like a lot of you guys, I've had calls with people where I was joking around and I even said, we could just do a thumbs up and thumbs down in the report. And I've had leadership go, that would be amazing. That would be perfect. And you're like, okay, I guess we can do that. Dashboards are supposed to be that high level, what's truly important, and then I can dive in. Honestly, the
I
standard
will say
dashboard, yeah,
not many people actually use dashboards these days.
no,
It's
hopefully
a
not.
great concept. It has gotten very little to no love in terms of updates and enhancements. And
Well, it's
thankfully
redundant.
nowadays, yeah. Uh, the one times where it can be useful is if you do have a workspace where, you have like your C-suite exec who needs to, who only needs 5 KPIs that are scattered across 6 different reports, and they need a high level, yes, but for the typical team that doesn't need that extra layer on top, a well-built
Right.
report services 99% of the needs
Oh,
anyways.
yeah. And in the history, our governance and our process was you had to have a dashboard with the report. And this was back in the day because we didn't want filters being applied or affecting anything. We wanted everyone to see the same thing. But as you could share reports, and honestly, you just realize that, okay, here's your dashboard with the trending chart and your bar chart. Then you click on it and there's the same line chart in the bar chart. You're like, so what's the point? So that, I think dashboards take that place in between getting to Power BI and getting to a report, where most reports that we have, can we actually say the red or green, yes or no? And being able to also track that across multiple reports. One of my favorite, I don't know how you even call it, but one of my favorite stories or terminologies or statements ever was when Steve Jobs first released the iPad. The keynotes obviously available online, and he was going through before he actually said iPad, but everyone knew he was going to, release the iPad for the first time. He's like, we want to create a product that's in between the phone and the computer. But in order for us to do this, it has to have a better purpose. It has to do things better than the phone or the computer. It has to be, we'll say, better at browsing the web or, than a phone, but it has to be better than watching a movie than the computer. If it's not better than either of the two products that we have, then it has no reason to be. And first, I'm like, well, that's philosophical. But also, I love that idea of, okay, if we're going to actually have a product out there, it needs to do something better. And for me, the scorecard has that purpose, Where the dashboard, again, kind of you can pin a visual, great, but then someone goes into the report, you think of that user story, same thing that they're looking at. And a report's great, but if they're trying to just dive in, like, am I doing well or not? Or should I be taking a better look at this or not? Well, the report can do that, but it's also a little hard. Maybe there's a lot of clicks. Well, all the capabilities with the scorecard allows us to do this. Now, with all that being said, it's not necessarily a magic cure. It's not, I set up a scorecard, business change. I've changed the company culture. There's a lot of things that we need to develop, not just in the product, but also in our culture. And that's actually the last thing that you and I talked about was data culture. It's
Yep.
amazing when you actually start talking with teams and departments where maybe there's not a lot of objectives or a lot of set objectives for different teams in terms of like where are we supposed to be trending. Some companies that have data silos or cultural silos where they're very protective of those numbers. I don't want to put my objectives on this scorecard that people can see, and what if I'm not making it? Then that's going to reflect poorly on me. A lot of people think that way, but that's not the point of the scorecard. A big part of this is when we work on developing reports is, well, what's the purpose of this? One of the things we talked about on the podcast, but also it's a very universal thing that I'm trying to develop more is as we build reports, I'm trying to categorize them, or at least the request. Because one of the big things is we can't work heavily on every single request that comes in. Do they all provide the same value? So, little background story is every report I would categorize into three different buckets in terms of we call it the effort. I think the number one thing that we should always be aiming for is a targeted report. Someone comes with a request, it's for sales, it's for marketing, it's for product research. Well, what's the target? Do we have a target? Do you have something that you're aiming for, whether it's this month, this quarter, this year? What are you trying to say that you were successful or not if you were to look at this report? And that's what we should be all be aiming for. And honestly, that's what data request should be is I have a target I'm trying to reach. Based on the company's goals and my team's goals, this is where we're trying to go. Scorecards are perfect for that. But a lot of requests that we get are very general. Can you show me sales year to date versus the previous year? Yeah, we can do that. But what's that actually going to do for you? And I think people begin to realize that as well. So trying to aim people towards when we get a request and to say, okay, what actions are you trying to take? Do you have any targets? That's where our scorecard really fits in. So
Exactly.
where do we actually start when it talks about creating these goals for the business? The first thing that we want to talk about is there's a few actually options here, and I haven't seen too many examples of this, but we're trying to begin to implement this in my own organization and then also with some of the clients that I have is can we build a report specifically for a scorecard rather than trying to build the scorecard fitting with the report you already have? When we get a request in, can we actually say, okay, what are the targets? And then we build the report around that, where you actually can begin to tell the narrative where the scorecard's kind of pre-built into your development cycle. This is actually kind of a great way also working with the stakeholder when you say, hey, there's a really great feature out here called scorecards. It can actually track your goals, whether it is something that's very targeted towards the team that's been set by the company or a little arbitrary where you're marketing. What are the things that you're trying to aim for this month or this quarter? Well, we're trying to get our visits up by 10%. Hey, scorecards are a great way. Let's actually build that narrative where you have the goal and then you have a page built to explain whether or not you're reaching that 10. So this can also help us as we develop our reports. I think a lot of people can agree some of the hardest things that we do is not building the report, it's understanding exactly what to build and what's going to be the most impactful. uh Reed, I don't know if you agree with me on this or not, but it's very hard to say is a report successful or not because you don't know how much more impactful you can always be. That's the thing. What could have made it better? It doesn't necessarily mean the data was wrong. It doesn't mean that I didn't have the right visuals, but did I actually understand the total objectives or the total impact that the person actually wanted? People have a hard time articulating what they need.
Uh, I agreed. Oh, actually, for some reason, it looks like our call disconnected. So I'm gonna have us reconnect so you can see we can see the screen again.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Is it ring? Oh, looks like you're not online. So your
I'm
Skype
not
might have
aligned.
crashed. Yeah, your Skype might have crashed.
Okay. Well, 1 second, we'll get that
No worries.
going.
Yeah, well, it's good though. Like I actually didn't
Time
even
to
realize
upgrade a
it because
computer.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, try calling me again. I have my own goal now, and that's to upgrade my computer. All right, let me know if you can see my screen. How's that?
Let's see. Waiting for something up and let's see if it's gonna populate through. It is sharing. I see it on. Ah, there we go. Okay. Yep. Now it's
Okay,
coming through. All right.
we're
Excellent.
good.
We are back on track. Yeah.
Cool.
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 Well, good thing that was in the middle of the demo. These are just boring slides, so
Well,
don't
yeah,
worry.
yeah.
We'll
Because
get.
as
Yeah.
you were talking, I didn't actually realize that the slides weren't progressing with you. It's like, oh, we're just gonna talk about explicit measures for a while. Okay, cool. No, we're
I
all
didn't know that.
good now. Yeah, because
Okay.
it keeps the last frame that was broadcast when it kills, so that's why I didn't actually realize it
Gotcha.
went over.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
because I have
we're
the
good now.
YouTube up and I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, it looks good. Where to start? Okay, cool. So yeah, keep me honest on that in case something happens, but I'll have Skype open just in case, just to check. So how are we doing with the connection?
All right, well, we're good on all the fronts. I'm getting all the feeds,
Awesome.
so excellent. Keep
All
going.
right, perfect. So let's keep diving in and then we will have our fun demos. One thing Trev talked about, and I should be on the next slide now, objectives, key results. Cool. So this is actually, if Trev didn't talk about this, which I believe he did, I encourage everybody to read the book. It's called Measure What Matters. And it basically talks about the methodology, objectives and key results, or OKRs. Amazing book, transformative book, especially for someone in the analyst space. It's very much dealt towards like leadership or towards like a leader of a company. But as a data analyst, it helps us think of us not as just we deal with the data, but when people ask us for requests, how do we actually think about the business as well? And again, this is it's a growing pain for a company who's not there yet because people can be very protective again of their own data. They want to show the numbers, but my goodness, are they afraid to show whether or not that's being successful in something that's published, right? They may have their own Excel files, and this is hard. So one thing I'll just encourage before we actually go into the advanced use cases of a goal is really look into getting this book, start reading about this. It's absolutely transformative. So we've talked about goals. We've talked about some of the use cases of it. And I want to, at this point, really talk about goals has a whole other set of features you may not be aware of. A lot of the demos that have been done, I think I did the Power BI show and we showed the basic connecting to a card, connecting to a bar chart. Well, goals kind of uses like the whole framework in Power BI of the personal bookmarks
Yep.
and it's so you have that whole framework that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. And I want to kind of dive into those use cases to actually see how it works. So we're going to do 2 main demos on our report, and then we're actually going to talk about using data outside of Power BI. So let's dive in. I'm going to pull up here. I have a pretty basic report here, as you can see, but not too basic. So one of the things with this report is it's looking at sales margin, and it's all dynamic based on the filter on the right-hand side or the top left here. So as you can see here, this is actually showing me I can actually affect every metric here based on whatever I select here. So this is really neat. So if I want to say, show me the average sales margin based on the last 6 months. So everything's going to change here. Every metric changes. I can see the percentage of products with profit. I can see the how many that margin over 6 months. Everything's based on this average that's affected by my filter on the top left. Pretty cool, right? So I'm actually going to go to one of my main dashboards here, and I've already had this set up and kind of been running for a while. And let's just go to a basic one here. I have my sales margin, and it's looking at the current sales margin versus the previous 3 months. So I'm just going to click on this guy here, the scorecard, and it's showing me this trending. Both numbers are dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
but how they're dynamic is the cool part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just click into the report, and let's kind of notice a few major points here. One, my filter on the top left, my months rolling is 1. So this is the first thing that I want to kind of notice here, is where the filter changes based on when I created the scorecard. So the months rolling is run. I'm looking at my sales margin versus the previous 3 months. If I go back to my scorecard, I actually have some sub goals, and I have the 3 month average versus the previous 6 months average. How does that work? So let's click into this one and actually see what happens. What happens here is you'll notice now the filter is actually 3 months. So all I did is I have this one filter that's affecting every measure. And all I have to do is actually just change that filter for my target and for my current. And I can actually have this now dynamically rolling at any time. It changes every day. How did I create this? Let's just do a demo and let's create this ourselves. And again, just to show the power of the filters and using that personal bookmark feature in a scorecard. So let's create a new one. I'm going to create a new sub goal, and I'm going to say the sales margin. We'll say 6 months versus 12 months. So let's connect the data. And I'm going to go to my report where this guy is located. So once I do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make sure that, okay, I have my 6 month margin here, and I'm just going to easily connect. I'm easily going to connect here.
Whoop. There we go.
Yep, we're all right. We're going to connect here, and I already have my filter set up. And again, the powerful part too is you'll notice when I click on the line chart, and actually when I hover over the visual here, it has all these tooltips. I can use any tooltip on any visual that I have when I connect to a goal or create a goal. So in this case, I'm going to use my sales margin done period over period. I'm going to choose the current. The current's actually a tooltip on here, and I'm going to track all the data points in this series. So that's my first thing I want to do. The next thing I want to do is I want to change my target. And again, everything, we'll say everything all the same. But the difference here is I'm going to change my filter here. So now it's looking at the sales margin average over 12 months. Going to choose the same data point. And that's looking at that current. So now I actually have this dynamically based on the filter. The only thing that changes is that filter. As the days go on, everything will basically be updated. So I actually have this great way to affect my scorecard, which utilizing the filters, utilizing however the state of the report is when I select my goal. This is a very powerful feature, and I want to emphasize that briefly. Based on the state of your report when you create it, that's what gets saved. Data, as long as the data gets updated every day and refreshed, all the filters applied, just like a personal bookmark, you can apply to the scorecard. So let's actually bring that one step further. And let's say you actually have your summary page with some goals, but you might have different teams with different needs. So let's actually go back to the report here. And I actually want to create a different type of scorecard. On this particular report, I have my 3 months now, and you can actually see here, I have a drill through page. Okay, category details. Well, wouldn't it be great to actually look at my period over period here for my dynamic margin as a goal itself? Looking at, let's say the bikes that are mountain bikes, and I wanted to track that over time. Well, just in the same way, I can actually do that. Everything works the same. So let's go back here. I'm going to go back to my goals. Let's create a new goal. And we create the same one. We'll say sales margin, period over period, mountain bikes, 12. So I have this goal set up here, and all I'm going to do is the same thing and connect the data. We'll choose the same report. And now I'm just going to make sure that all my filters apply. I have my 6 months. Actually, let's do 3, and I'll change the name of it. So we'll choose 3. I'll go to my bikes. Again, everything works the same. So I'm going to right click.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to drill through. I'm led on this page, filter applies. I can see that here's my period over period, make sure everything works the way I want to. Excellent. Let's choose mountain bikes right here. And you can see everything's carried over. We'll create that goal, that connection. Let's do the target in the same way, and we'll make this 6 months now. So we'll make sure we have the 6 months in the top left. We'll choose bikes. 6 months on the top. We have mountain bikes here. We'll just select it. And now when I go into the report, and I'll actually show exactly how this works. Not with the developer view. We don't need the developer view. Now, let's go to the report. I'll go back to read mode. Everything's saved. I'm actually going to go directly to the report. Not only is it going to bring me with the filters applied, it's actually going to bring me to the drill through page. So everything's in a sense ready to go. So if you have these drill through pages, think about the different types of drill through pages we can create now that begin to describe a narrative, where we don't have to have everything all on one screen. This screen itself is pretty loud, but now I can begin to separate things and have all these hidden pages that are devoted towards a team's goals or just to certain items. If I want to create one for touring bikes, if I want to create one for road bikes as well, I can do so. Now, one of the things Power BI is going to be releasing, I think it's on the roadmap, but basically the ability to kind of cascade goals where if I had a hierarchy, it can create all the goals underneath it. I don't know when that's coming out, but man, that's going to save some time in case you had a lot more than just 3 categories. But in this format, I can use all of these different features of the drill through, all the features of, again, just like what works with a personal bookmark, but more powerful because I can track that over time. Going back to my scorecard here, I have all these different goals and all these different goals here that are all based on basically using the personal bookmark architecture. I have this just for a certain manufacturer here, looking at based on the dynamic filter for the month and also for what I selected. Again, using tooltips, using drill through, and then even using the bar context or the data point context in my report. I can create all these different dynamic goals and also track it over time. I've had some of these set up for quite a while now, actually, since the beginning of the year. And again, both the target and the current change based on that dynamic filter. It remembers each point as it was if it was their own personal bookmark. But even more powerful, I have that history. So again, by far and away, to think about what we have in all of our data, to give this high level summary view now for users, and then use the drill through and then use other pages to help explain it, by far and away is incredible. One thing I hope, and I'm pretty sure will come out eventually, is us be able to track the target. This is everyone's largest complaint and also my largest complaint with goals, especially when you have a dynamic target where, yeah, you can see the current change over time, but what about in July of 2021? Was it over or under then? What was the target? Especially if I have this dynamic thing. When that comes out, I will come up. If you ask me, I will come back here again and show exactly how powerful that is. But for right now, this is just the very basics in terms of what we can get and what we can do just using our drill through, using Power BI and goals, just like they were personal bookmarks. So that's our first demo. That, again, this is all just within the report itself.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I actually want to do is let's take them to the next level. And actually, are there any questions at this point before I run through?
No questions so far that I've seen.
Okay.
Just general chat stuff, so.
Perfect. So let's take them to the next level. And again, goals can take data that's also outside of Power BI. And this is where I think goals really shine and can really shine, especially taking all the data points out of business and a team and putting this all together. So everything we showed was in a Power BI report. Now, at the beginning of the session here or the beginning of the call, there's a form out there that you can still submit to. It's a Microsoft form. It asks a few questions. What that actually does, and I'll actually kind of showcase that here. And let's go back and actually add this form and basically ask, how are you enjoying virtual meetups? How likely would you attend this in-person user group in the coming months? And are you using any scorecards? So this form actually goes to Power Automate. And I actually can see that. Good thing some of you have actually submitted this already. Probably had about 7 or 8 of you submit it, and you can still do so. What that's actually doing is it's going to a SharePoint list, and really can go anywhere. Every form submission is going to a SharePoint list. And what I wanted to do for myself personally is I wouldn't reach out to Microsoft until it's a 1 to 7 rating, until I at least know that the consensus around the community is people do want to actually go back to meeting online. So what I actually have here is this in a scorecard. And I'm going to refresh the page, and you'll actually see how many submissions that we've had. We've had 59, and you can actually see that people are loving meetups online. That's great. So I actually see this trend here, that even though I first submitted this when we did our first Chicago user group about this back in February, it's gone down slightly. So maybe that's a trend for me. I have some rules set up in the statuses so I know just where things are trending. But for me, my thing that I wanted to track from this form was how likely are users to return.
Mm-hmm.
And I can actually see here that based on all your guys' submissions and submissions I've had in the past, that we're at 4 out of 7. I wanted this to be at least around a 5.5 out of 7 before I was really going to start pushing Microsoft. But I actually can see now that we're still under. I want to note, none of this is coming from Power BI. Not one data point that you're seeing here is coming from a Power BI report. All of this is utilizing SharePoint and Power Automate, where I'm updating the goal in Power Automate.
I love that.
When I first realized that you can do that, and I can take, and again, this is just simple. This is SharePoint, Microsoft Forms, and the goal feature. Any connect data or any connector in Power Automate, you can use in a goal. So think about all the features: tweets, users, SQL, Dataverse, all these things that you may actually not have in a Power BI report or something manual. You can actually use and utilize in the same scorecard you have a goal or a Power BI report in. So you think about all the different teams where maybe they want to check in, where you also have your product report, having that in the same scorecard. I'm still a little disappointed people are still not really kind of diving into wanting to come in. I can actually see the history here. I can see, all right, I mean, we've been around this 3.5 to 4 range really since the beginning. A little disappointed in that because I'm ready to go back. And then I actually wanted to also track the last question on there was how many people actually have used goals. And I actually see now that still not necessarily trending high, is kind of gotten slightly higher over time. But based on my submissions, I can actually see that my percentage is still pretty low. It's 26% out of all the responses that I've gotten. So still telling me that there's still this big use case out there. There's still a large audience. The next thing I'll add to the form is, what is your experience with it? We'll do a rating on there. But I track all of this stuff. And it's, again, coming from a Microsoft form, none of this actually exists in any Power BI data set in my tenant. It's all coming from SharePoint. It's all getting pushed through Power Automate. And I'll show you exactly what we're doing. So I'll take the goal here. And there's a bunch of stuff to get the average and everything. But basically, the first thing I do is get a few variables of what the current value was. I get the response details. I send it, create an item in a SharePoint list. I get the items and basically able to create the average. And you can see I'm updating each goal here. How many people are loving the meetups? I'm getting an output. So a little experience using Power Automate, because obviously I want to get that cumulative average, not just the latest value. But I can actually utilize this, again, to update all of my goals. But not just that. I actually have another Power Automate set up to notify me via email and also my phone when that rating of people likely to come back, when it goes over 5.5. And that's really simple to do. And we'll actually showcase this proactive side. And again, this is the thing I love about the goals and Power Automate is, rather than someone having to go to the report, you may have different teams where you want Power BI to be proactive. Yes, we have subscriptions. Yes, we still have the dashboard alerts, but this is way more powerful. So let's exactly show what we can do here. So let's make sure I have the Chicago Pug. I'm going to actually create a new goal here, or a new automate flow. I'll type in goals. And I have to say, the team has done amazing features when it comes to what you can actually do in a Power Automate and goals. So I'm going to choose my workspace.
Mhm.
I'm going to choose the scorecard ID, and I'm going to see how likely to return in person. And so basically what this will do is when the status of the goal changes, based on what I already have set up in the goal itself. Again, I have this automated to anytime the goal is over 5.5, the
Mhm.
status will be ready to go. And all I have to do here is basically set up, I can do a condition statement. I see basically when the new status is, we'll say completed. And all I have to do here is my normal Power Automate yes or no. And again, if it is over, all I have to do is I can set up basically a notification, send me a mobile notifications like, I can use the variables just like in Power Automate. I'll say the new status. So now I'm actually going to have this set up. I'm going to save this and I'll message read once this finally goes over. Might be 2 years from now, unfortunately, but we'll say goals all Microsoft. Now, there is governance around Power Automate that there should be certain nomenclature around your goals or your flows so you can find them. We're not doing that right now. But basically, anytime the status changes, now it's ready to go. So if you guys all submit sevens, maybe we can change it here, and then I'll get a notification, and I'll happily send that to Reed to show him it actually works. So
Excellent.
yeah, go back to that form, submit sevens, and then I'll call Microsoft. So there's a whole other side of this when we actually go back to the manual goals, where it's not necessarily this data collection where it's all automate, where it's, has to come from Twitter or has to come from Dataverse, or again, it could be the number of emails you send or how many calendar invites that you have. It doesn't have to be you, it can be the team. But I actually have this whole other side of this where I want to show it's a little crude. I'll admit that the application that I have, it's actually pretty crude. But what I wanted to also showcase was a lot of people, as we get into scorecards, you realize how powerful the Power Platform is. And a lot of times we're using the Power Apps, especially to input data, collect data. I imagine a scenario where some of us are using Power Apps for project management, or really any project management system. So I actually have these 4 goals on the bottom here, where I'm actually looking at basically imagine a Power App where these 4 projects were here. And really what we can do is I'm actually going to go to this particular application that I have, and this is basically inputting some information. What phase are we in? What percentage of the goal are we in? And a comment. And I can actually input what via this app. I don't actually have to do this in the scorecard. So let's say the marketing platform. We'll go to the marketing platform and we'll say, Reed did great. And we'll say we're at
Excellent.
100%. We'll say phase A instead of great time on the call. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to save this, and that's going to trigger now on a SharePoint list or wherever your database is, that to go back to my scorecard. Now, it does take a little bit of time, but you'll actually see here when we go to the manual goals, I'll refresh it. Maybe it goes a little quicker this time. Let's say the marketing platform. And you can actually see here that all the goal check-ins that happened here are all coming from Power Automate based on that Power App. So it does take a little time when you're doing that push a check-in sometimes. So rather than the responses where it's pretty quickly, but you can actually see here in previous demos that I've done, all these different values where I actually add the comment and I
Mhm.
actually add what the title was, it all gets pushed into here. I actually see here that I believe I want to hear, do we need to use Google Tag Manager in our solution? And actually see what the percentage was at the time that I did that submission. So using other applications, again, it doesn't have to be Power Apps, but if you want to check your projects too. So imagine a world that's available to you today where you can have a scorecard that has connection to one of your data sets, to an actual report in Power BI, something coming from the outside using Power Automate, but then your own manual system where your team is required to input data or required to say this, the check-in. We're
Hmm.
actually beginning to utilize this for BI tickets using Jira. How many tickets are coming in? How many are we completing? We're actually utilizing this for our refresh rate to actually track different workspaces and what the refresh rate is. So these are all amazing little tools that we can do. And I'm, again, not just thinking this for my company, but I'm also thinking about this for my team, where I can actually check these things that come outside of the Power BI sphere that all get connected into one scorecard in one place. All of our data, you can question or you can say, should it be all be centralized? Well, scorecards give us a great way to begin to centralize our data and to begin to look in one place. So I don't need Salesforce and Twitter and Sprout Social and all these different places. You can actually see, yep, here's the update. I can see, here we go. This is the update that just
Excellent.
happened. Marketing platform, Reed did great. Phase a great time on the
I
call.
need the encouragement
Rex,
sometimes, so
yeah.
it's appreciated.
Well, now you're in the scorecard, so yeah. And
Yes.
so, but you can see here all that updated. And I'm getting the average of. I said my phase was 100%. Is actually showing me that now the average is 53%. And so this is all again getting tracked from all these different systems. So thinking outside just of the Power BI space. So at this point, I'll kind of lead into the questions, but I just wanted to showcase not just uh, using the advanced features in Power BI itself, but using everything outside of Power BI, what you can do.
I did have one comment of just somebody who is appreciative of your user group and everything. So Manuel Fuentes really appreciate. He's implemented Power BI goals. It looks like, and had a couple of pages built off of it for marketing, product management, and analytics. And he also, I guess, has maybe attended some of your Chicago user groups as well, apparently.
Awesome.
Yeah. Tommy said, also feel free to drop any questions into that. I honestly like considering the fact that you can technically funnel in external data into Power BI goals outside of Power BI.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see Power BI goals become Microsoft goals. You know, just have it become
Yeah.
a platform because they just did that with Purview, right? Went from
Yeah.
Azure Purview to
Microsoft Purview.
Microsoft Purview because they're trying to make it its own like dedicated software like SaaS tool outside of
Right.
Azure. So I do think there's the potential for goals to become that too, where basically just let it exist in the Microsoft verse, and you can plug in any data really from any system, either for your what you're tracking or the goal you're tracking against, and just let that be a central dashboard for any of that. I can imagine being able to do things like track how often a SharePoint file gets opened, or like so many different things. Just user usage statistics, or the like a report. A great thing I think someday to be able to plug in and see an option where you could do daily usage. Like if a report ever spikes over, say, like 25 people like who open the report on a single day, like that would be really nice. And actually in theory, like hard word, the usage statistics report that opens up in a workspace, once
Mm-hmm.
you've added that there, you can point a goal to that. So in theory,
Yeah.
you actually could have data tracking on whether or not people were using reports ever, so like how often, for many of the metrics related to that. So
I think you're spot on that you can absolutely do that. So
yeah.
because really you can connect to any report in your workspace.
Exactly. Yep. And uh, I do know that I won't say other than it's like I'm looking forward to more analytics in Power BI. And then like I
Yeah.
think yeah, as those come out, we will have other cool ways to use goals. Because I mean, the more goals, the power from that comes from how much data is available for it. Like it's the same with a
Right.
report. A report is only as powerful as the data it can connect to. So the more data points in Power BI or outside of it that you can funnel into it, the more useful it can be in terms of being able to compare two different things. So
Well, and
I
think
have a
about the
yeah.
integration. Yeah,
Hmm?
the integration they're doing now with Power BI and PowerPoint is on the roadmap, but I think they're going to do the same thing in Outlook. So think about that ability where why couldn't a scorecard be in one of your Outlook tabs? where that's something you can check every day.
Isn't some, I mean, I know there is Outlook and PowerPoint integrations that they've announced, and where it's like you can there's going to be some kind of embedding environment. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, essentially, like, I would say as you were mentioning, maybe having a tab in Outlook, like at some point you stop becoming a single tool installed on your computer as much as you're now just a platform. Because if you can go from Outlook to Teams to this and that, you're more of just like at that point it's not too far away from a web browser where you just have
Right.
tabs for all the different Microsoft tools that you're using. Um,
Right.
maybe reorganized so it's a bit more seamless between them. But I totally get you with having the um, easy tracking of that, especially with Outlook, because that runs 100% of the time my computer's on. It's over in the corner right now, and it is
Right.
always just there for that. I did actually have a question from Manuel,
Yeah.
and I think you hit on this a little bit earlier, but do you have a Jira or anything outside of Power BI data, outside of Power BI example for demos? And you did kind of take data from Power Automate and pump it into there, but in
Hmm.
theory, you can do any data source, right? As long as
Yeah.
there is a number that you can fetch from something with Power Automate, you can put that into goals, right? Doesn't matter where it's from,
Yeah.
as long
And
as there's
Jira
a
is
Power
one of the
Automate
easy
connector.
connectors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
Jira
exactly.
is one of the connect. I don't have a demo, and luckily my computer I can't select anything on it right now, so we just made it through. But there, yeah, you can theoretically use the Jira connector in Power Automate and push
Mhm.
that to Power BI Scorecard, and that doesn't add any customization right now with Jira. I think you need a third party tool to connect to in Power BI. Into the Power Platform, you don't have to.
Okay, so yeah, that's great to know because I was going to say the other suggestion would be making a report with it, but if you have to use a third-party platform to pull in the data for you, then but there already is a Power Automate connector that lets you connect directly to Jira to grab a
Yep.
metric. So yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. So
Or
it
grab the
sounds,
ticket.
yeah, yeah. So Manuel, I'd consider giving that a try because he's saying, and I'll just pop it onto the screen for context for people watching later. Right now, they have to plug in about half their monthly goals manually. And it looks like if a Power BI report exists, it feeds into Google Goals. So yeah, I would say if you are specifically dealing with your data, try Power Automate for that. It sounds like that's a much easier process for now.
Right.
It is kind of surprising there is an Automate connector for
But not
Jira,
a
but
Power BI one.
not a Power Query one. Granted,
Oh
different
yeah,
teams and
yeah.
Microsoft is massive, but I think that at least gives me hope that if one team can have a connector for it, hopefully it's not too long, maybe until a beta connector comes out for Power BI that would
Yeah.
have the same thing.
I know C Data has a Jira connector that we've used in the past. So
Yep. Okay. Excellent. But yeah, the possibilities are as limitless as the
oh
data
yeah,
sources that you have, either through a
exactly.
built-in connector. Yeah, and I'd say like after
And
seeing what Tom was showing with the Power Automate is you really like two primary ways to funnel it in. Have a report that already just has a visual you can click on, which in this case you can also configure the filters pane. I know when I did that, I did a few times where I put a relative date period on there, which is
yeah,
anytime you pin
works great.
something, dashboard's the same thing. Put a relative date onto there so it travels with you as the data refreshes, or just
That's
use Power
actually
Automate.
yeah.
Yeah, go
That's
ahead.
actually a great example. And again, I would love to show it, but can't touch my computer right now in fear that we would lose connection. But one of
Sure.
the things that I tested out in the beginning was I had a certain metric that really only made sense to look at when it was a complete month. So I did the relative date and I did the last 6 months, but not including the month we're in. I was like, okay, will
Yep.
this work next month? And it worked like a charm. And when you go to the scorecard, when I click from the goal to the report, it shows me the latest month. In this case, it's April. It's a full month of April. So, and it's amazing how well that works, especially when you
Yep.
have those different use cases.
And there's one thing that I'll mention that is required for a little bit of this setup and I'll pop this off in goals because I've deployed it for a few clients. Finally got to deploy it for myself. When you're doing any kind of a filter from the filter pane, if you select, let's say last 7 days, it will say date filter is being applied. It will show you the date range. It actually won't say
Hmm.
on the scorecard last 7 days, but as
No.
long as the date was set as a relative filter, it will keep that. So it doesn't
Yes.
call it relative date. It just shows you the exact date window. But I did, I have confirmed that if you go in the next day, the date being filtered on that does continue to roll forward. So as
Yeah.
long as the filter pane, you've gone from like date range to or advanced to relative and set it there, that will stay with it. It's basically the exact same process, honestly, that or very similar process that you would have with dashboards, which
Hmm.
most, again,
Yeah.
not really anybody uses anymore. But same principle. Apply relative dates there. When you pin, it will keep the relative date up. When you pin, so quote unquote, a goal to or connected to the data setting and goals, uh, relative dates are the way to go with that. Which is why the filter pane
Yeah.
is very lovely to have, because you can choose between basic, advanced, and relative for the big
And
data
two of
types.
the things that help not confuse users that we do is either I would love to pin a check-in, but when we're creating a goal that has that types of items like that 7 days, but you never know, we'll either add that to the title or add that to the check-in where we say this goal represents the rolling 7 days based on the latest date. So
Hmm.
always having that little reference for users is a big help.
Exactly, 100%. But yeah, this is great. I think I learned a bit more about certainly some of the more of the Power Platform integrations today, and some of the other use cases for that. And there are, I feel like I'm still only scratching the surface. I'm doing very basic stuff, but I know at some point there's got to be like a if this, but this, and that, and this, but exception of this,
Yeah.
or if this happens. All, like the nested logic. Like there's probably some really unique stuff to do, but a lot of it is, I think with anything, is you got to start framing yourself on thinking on what are the scenarios that I want to like. Think of it to me as like a virtual assistant. I want someone to come in and inform me when something happens, but you have to think about, well, what are the things that I really care about happening? But
Right.
it's the conversation with these is not far different from what is a report service, what is a dashboard service,
Hmm.
um, what is a goal serve for, and all three of them at the end of the day are it's a insights that lead to action. Some type of action should happen for the company. They all have different functions. A dashboard should be viewed, a report should be interacted with, a goal should provide alerts. You don't interact
Right.
with a goal in any way. It's not designed to have people go in and play with the goals. It should, you should get a ping on Teams, an email notification. Then something's changed. You go to the report to look at it, and then you figure out, maybe get an insight of why said thing was changing. Hopefully good, not
And
bad.
yeah, and you hit it right on the head where unlike when we connect to a data set for the first time, our first thing is we can explore and then begin to build. With goals, you kind of need to blueprint out what you're trying to do before you actually start creating your
Yep.
goal, or else it's going to get really confusing.
So I want to pop one more thing up for Manuel as we're wrapping up. But it looks like for his example, he needs to plug in the data manually, membership stats, influencers engaged, and all that. So as just a mention here is like, if there is any kind of like assistance needed, is that something that you like? Do you provide any
Oh
like
yeah,
consulting related? Okay, yeah, so like I'd say
yeah.
like
So
his contact info is in the description below. Drop Tommy a message on LinkedIn. If it's a quick question and answer, I'm sure I'll help out. Otherwise, like with most of us, we provide consulting for
yeah,
getting this stuff set up. And the goal at the end of the day with any of these things is automation, right? You don't want
yes,
anything manual. We want to like take the soap and scrub manual out of a mouth of the organization. Nothing should be manual
right,
anymore, other than maybe Manuel, which is is your specific name.
right. Well, and
But
I think the
yeah,
biggest thing
yeah.
is how can I trust what I'm looking at? And I think if you can answer that
Hmm.
question, or at least relieve that question for your organization or even for yourself, I mean, that's
Hmm.
what we're all in this space, like you and I, because we've had that issue in the past. Like, I never want that to happen again. So
Exactly.
if we can help
Exactly.
that for other people, so
100%. Um, I don't see any other questions, and we're just about time. So, Tommy, I want to thank you for coming on today. I'm sure at some point I'll have you back on again. I feel like SNL. What I need to do is I need to start getting like the letter jackets for the people who have been on, like who've been a guest more than X number of
like
times.
SNL. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, because they have the host jackets. It's
The
like I
Room,
think
yeah.
three or four, and like Steve Martin and a few
Baldwin,
others, but they have the
Timberlake,
fancy.
yeah.
Yeah, they have the fancy robes. That
Steve
actually,
Martin.
like, I'm joking aside, I might consider getting a pin for like three or four timers to just get like and mail like a little pin for people who've been repeat guests on on my stream.
Well, as long as you have the special room with the brandy, I'm in. So
I'll just set up a little wet bar like over in the corner over here. You'll just see like
right,
I'll, I'll get like a fake bottle of Remy the 13th or something.
that's phenomenal.
Or
Yeah,
sorry, Louis the 13th. That's right.
yeah. You might have to do like an NFT for that for all of us, but if we can't meet up
Right
in
there you go.
person,
Yeah, yeah. I still need to create custom stickers for the live stream chat because it's like a member feature, and I've had it on my to-do list. Adam's better at member features than I am. But digressions aside, Tommy, thank you so much for coming on. Have a great rest of
thank
your
you for
Friday and
having me.
weekend. Yeah, absolutely. And then everyone, thanks for tuning in today and keeping for a lively chat. So this has been great, and enjoy your weekend. And I will see all of you next Wednesday when Sam McKay will be on doing a live stream on Wednesday and talking a lot about how to have like an app-like experience for creating Power BI reports. So, all right, Tommy, enjoy, and
Thanks for having
I'm
me.
sure we'll see each other again soon. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships as well. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on social media to help pass on this awesome content and to help the channel grow. So until next time.